Raw, uncut, and unapologetic. Welcome to Men Talking Mindfulness with your hosts Jon Macaskill and Will Schneider. Here we focus on helping men and those with men in their lives solve some of life's complex challenges through understanding the practices of mindfulness and how they can help. Each episode is in an environment free of judgment and criticism, with a focus on authenticity and inner peace. Let's dig in.
As a leader and as a parent, what greater gift can I give to those around me than my presence and my focus? Being present in my conversations, present in my decision-making, my leadership at home and at work is rooted in the power of connection, which builds trust. No matter what role is center stage, we need connection before we give direction. This is a quote from my friend, 2017 TEDx talk, retired United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel, Combat Veteran, and PhD, Dr. Jannell MacAulay. Welcome back to the Men Talking Mindfulness show. I'm Jon Macaskill, retired Navy SEAL commander, turned mindfulness and meditation teacher here in Colorado Springs. And my co-host over there is Will Schneider, a yoga and mindfulness teacher in New York City. Here on the Men Talking Mindfulness show, we dive deep into raw and real conversations about mental health, personal growth, and the journey of self-discovery. Now, you're wondering, how can mindfulness improve my life, enhance my leadership roles, and create a more harmonious workplace? Well, this is exactly what we're going to be talking with Jannell about today. So why do you want to listen to Jannell? Well, here's a little background. Dr. Jannell MacAulay is a combat veteran who served 20 years in the United States Air Force as a pilot, commander, special operations consultant, and professionalism instructor. With her innovative leadership style, she was the first leader to introduce mindfulness as a proactive performance strategy within the United States military. She continues to consult with the DoD, DOJ, and corporate America, delivering keynotes and high-performance warrior mindset training program called Warrior's Edge, which she developed with Pete Carroll of the Seattle Seahawks and Dr. Michael Gervais. She is a TEDx speaker and mother of two who is on a mission to help individuals excel in high stress and rugged environments by showing them how to lean into each moment to find their best selves. And though it isn't part of her official bio, she was featured along with 3 other amazing women in the Rolling Stone magazine for being part of a mission that destroyed 1,200 tons of poisonous gas in Syria, and in doing so, helped avert a global showdown and saved an untold number of lives.
Wow.
Which I understand is possibly being made into a movie, which we may be able to talk about later. And also at some point, Jannell is going to tell us about her stint in California Miss Teen, where her talent was juggling machetes. So all that said, we are thrilled to have you with us, Jannell. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited to get into this show. And we're also, for our audience, very excited to have you here with us. Thank you for tuning in, for sharing our podcast, and for helping us grow and for becoming more mindful. Now, that all out of the way, I'm going to turn it over to my brother from another mother, Will, to lead this opening practice to calm us all down, because now, after reading that intro, we're all super excited.
I know. I'm a little bit like, oh my God, this esteemed guest. I'm a little nervous because, wow. I mean, just the Machete juggling and the Rolling Stone magazine and Miss Teen and saving lives in Syria, like, just so impressive. Thank you for being here, Jannell. Let's calm it all down. We're just going to do 3 breaths. We're going to do a parachute breath. We're going to inhale, like kind of take a swift inhale, and exhale very slowly out. Easy, easy, long, long, long exhales. Let's do a couple more. In, slow, deliberate, long exhale. And see if you can melt more of your body into this space as you exhale. Last one. In. Let it go. And we'll do one more for a little bit of a bonus. In. Let it go. Let it go. Okay, let's just sit silent for just a moment and just feel that silence, that stillness, just for sometimes we don't take these moments in our lives to take a couple breaths, and really you can just take this moment, also feel that experience of just a few breaths and how it can make us feel and how it can help us to ground, relax, be more present, be more connected to ourselves. And when you're ready, you can make some movements if you like. Put a little smile on your face, and let's enjoy this interview and conversation with Jannell. Thank you for being here, Jannell.
We had to do an extra breath there. I'm pretty sure it's this weekend that Navy plays Air Force in football, and we had to do that extra breath for Navy to beat Air Force because we lost last year. and if you don't know,
have to do a few extra ones.
Ouch. Well played, touche. All right. So yeah, if you don't know, Jannell is an Air Force Academy grad. I'm a Naval Academy grad, so we've got that rivalry going. But we're friends aside from that. So, Jannell, in your personal journey,
it's a healthy rivalry, and I just want to say I'm very honored to be on your show. I just love what you guys are doing, and I'm excited for this conversation.
Awesome. Well, we're honored to have you here, and we too are excited about this show. So let's get into it. So. Your personal journey. I know this because I've interviewed you before, but we have a different audience now. So can you share a little bit about your personal mindfulness journey and how it aided your military career?
Absolutely. I think I am like many academy graduates or individuals that kind of grow up in households where they're inspired to serve and find a cause bigger than themselves. You know, I grew up in a family of public servants, Marine Corps, a helicopter pilot was for my uncle. Both my grandfathers served. My dad was a police officer. My mom was a nurse. So I definitely felt that calling to serve. But I also had this distinct drive to make a difference. And so they paired very well together because a lot of service-based individuals also have that commitment and drive to make the world a better place. And that's definitely how I started out. But I call it an incomplete strategy because it set me on the path to success, but it also set me on the path of success that led to burnout. And I originally thought that it was unique to me. Like I was the only one that struggled with these types of things. And what I figured out as I became a leader is that it was not unique. There were a lot of people who suffered from this same desire to serve and to be their best selves, but also to find like a stickiness in that journey and a lack of joy in the day-to-day struggle. And so once I kind of discovered that this was not unique to me, it was something that I could actually solve, not just for me, but for more people. I really had the opportunity when the Air Force sent me back to school to dive into the research and really study this concept of being able to perform in high stress environments and also thrive in those moments, especially, enjoy the struggle a little bit, because most of us high performers do like that space. But a lot of times it does lead to, a sort of misery in our lives. We'll be at the moment of victory or success and still feel lost. And I kind of described it as myself in this space where from outside looking in, and for all intents and purposes, people would have thought, oh, she has it all, right? She's got great family. She's a military spouse and her husband is successful, 2 great kids. Like my career was going well. I was doing all the hard things I wanted to do in my life. But I found myself in a space where honestly, I forgot how to laugh. And I lost sight of all the love that was right in front of me. And I was so busy trying to be perfect at everything that I did. I don't know if there's other recovering perfectionists out there.
This guy.
Yeah, right.
I forgot that there's growth and learning within imperfection. And I lost myself and I went searching for an answer. And that's what led me to this research around human performance and thriving in stressful environments. And what I really found is we can train 3 things as human beings. We can train our body, we can train our craft, and we can train our mind. And up until that point, no one had exposed me to the concept of training our minds. So that's really where I started doing the work for myself and realized it had such an impact in my journey. I wanted to share it as a leader. And that's kind of where I started, incorporating these skill sets into my leadership, leading myself first and then leading others with these skills. And, I didn't really know what I was walking into, except for the fact that I believed it was the right thing to do. I knew that sharing these things with others and the people that I led would unlock, their potential as much as it was unlocking mine. And so that's kind of where the journey started. Self-necessity.
Yeah.
That's right.
What was some of that, those early practices? Like, what was the one practice that kind of turned the light bulb on, or was there a moment for you that kind of, things started to, you know what I'm saying? It was, that moment, if you can explain it or describe it to our audience, would be great.
Yes, the best way I can describe it, it really was mindfulness, right? That was the core skill set that I learned that changed my life, and then really enabled me to build on all the other skill sets, the psychological mental prehab, I would call it, that has helped me continue to do hard things and then also create cultures around that concept. And the way I think mindfulness worked so successfully in my life is because it directly affects the way we make decisions, especially under stress, right? We all know you should eat right. We all know you should sleep more, and you should love more and connect more and get out in nature and, all these, like, not stress out over the little things. But in practice, it's easy to do when you're on a retreat or you're, on a mountain side. I used to take off my skis and just plop down and meditate at the top of the mountain. It's really easy to do in places like that. It is extremely difficult to do when you're flying in a combat zone, when you're leading people, when you're just in the carpool lane trying to drop your kids off at school.
That's the most stressful place I've been.
Absolutely, right? And so I kind of really think that what mindfulness unlocked for me was the ability to create space for making more rational decisions in all aspects of my life, in all moments of my life. And that was life-changing for me.
Well, let's talk about those high stress environments, right? Like the combat missions, corporate America, or the carpool lane, right? So how can the mindfulness techniques be effectively used in high stress environments?
Well, the first thing I teach is it has to be a deliberate practice. I teach the concept of mindfulness being mental push-ups. Just like you would train your physical body to do hard things and meet the demands of a moment in a stressful environment, you have to train your mind and prepare your mind for that as well. So just, like we do our physical workouts, we do our mental workouts. And so it has to be something you do intentionally and ahead of time. It's not like I'm flying my plane and I get a, anti-aircraft artillery threat. My flares go out, and then all of a sudden, as I'm defensively maneuvering, I have to think to myself, "Oh, I should practice mindfulness." Right?
Not the time to start.
Yeah, too late. So it's something you do have to train and prepare for. And I really think the sweet spot is 10 minutes a day. If you look at the research and the maximum benefit, and then what I have found in my practice of what high performers will actually commit to, right? It kind of like it crosses right at 10 minutes. And I try to meet people where they're at and give them two different options. You can do those 10 minutes in one sitting, or this technique that I find to be very effective in my life is the mindful minute. If I can do 1 minute of push-ups 10 times a day, then I can create a longer period of mindful awareness throughout my experience. And so that's the idea, right? You do these things ahead of time so that when you're in the combat zone, you're in the carpool lane, you're in that corporate environment having to make decisions, you've done the prehab and the prep work, so that in the moment you would do what I would call a tactical pause. It's a crisis action way to use your mindfulness, and that is just stop, breathe, and refocus. And that's something that is a skill set that can be cultivated through that deliberate practice of mindfulness.
Well, for me, I know when I first got it told that I should try mindfulness because I was stressed out and because I was anxious and I was struggling with different things, I laughed in the counselor's face, because I was like, man, I don't want to do this hippy dippy woo woo stuff. I've got some serious things going on. And now that I'm teaching that is something that I encounter quite often from the other side. Right now I'm teaching it and I see the faces when I first stand up and I'm like, oh, I'm here to talk about mindfulness. Like, oh gosh, what is this, For a company or a team that's new to mindfulness, where should they start, and how do you overcome that skepticism for them to adopt it?
Well, you start with yourselves, and that's something I teach leaders all the time. You know, a lot of them will say, "Oh, I'm going to create space for people on my team to do mindfulness or mental push-ups. I'm not going to do it, but I will allow them the space to do it." Right? I totally support their effort.
Right.
That's not going to work, right? Culturally in your organization, and it's not really going to become a part of your leadership where the benefit of the practice, will seep into the culture. So you have to start with yourself. It's an individual journey. And I have found the way to get people to start for themselves is, first, there's a lot of compelling science. A lot of people want to see the data. There is research from not only, healing people's psoriasis, improving their relationships, like improving your sleep quality, decreasing emotional eating, right? You're more connected. I mean, we could go on and on about the research, but it's not just inside well-being and decision-making for the individual. We are now really finding some compelling research in this space of, organizational change, like performance-based results in the hard things we want to do in our life. And then also mindfulness being like a protection for your brain for future trauma. Right? Like the more you practice mindfulness, we all know we're going to be exposed to some type of emotional or psychological trauma in the future. It's just a part of our human life in this world, modern world we live in today. So whether that's a combat zone you have in your future or just, adversity and life sucks, things that are going to happen to you. And I like to say we as human beings do hard things either by chance or by choice, right? I choose to go in a combat zone and do something really hard, but then I could also just have some shitty thing happen to me in my life. And so am I prepared for both those circumstances? And I think that the research is very compelling that mindfulness is a core skill set, not the only one, right? There's a lot of other things I think that go into overall resiliency and performance, but it's a core skill set for even attempting to get after the hard things in our life.
In the quote in the beginning, and just to go a little bit deeper into mindfulness and that self that you talked about and developing that relationship to yourself, how does that help to, or does it develop more trustworthiness within yourself? And then how does that bring more trust into an organization as you begin to trust yourself? Because I love that you put that in that, in that TED talk, because, that trust is so, I feel we let ourselves off the hook so easily, or we kind of don't trust ourselves because we don't have that intimate relationship with ourselves. We don't get to know our breath and understand that we have the ability to self-regulate, to self-master. So let's dive into trust for a second, because I think it's important for everyone to hear about how mindfulness can take us to that place and what that trust does for us internally, and then as a leader and within an organization.
I love that you've pivoted to trust, because it's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Yeah, awesome.
So most people think of trust in this interpersonal trust. Do you trust me? Do I trust you? Which is extremely important. In fact, and I think where mindfulness helps us with interpersonal trust, I told a story in my TED Talk where, many of us leaders are just in this go, go, go hustle mentality. You want to be present, but you're thinking about the email that you have to write, or you're thinking about the tasker that you have to work on later that day. So that even when we're having a conversation with someone, we've all had that experience where you're sitting with your boss and you're talking, and then you think to yourself, they're looking at me, but they aren't listening at all.
I've been on the other side of that too. I've been the boss where my mind is like, right? I've been on both sides of that.
Yeah.
Right. And you probably yourself unintentionally like, oh my gosh, I'm not paying attention.
Oh yeah.
None of us intentionally sit down with someone and say, hey, I'm not going to listen. It's just that we are highly distracted by the things that are, trying to take our attention away, to the tune of like almost half your waking moments, right? You're not paying attention to what's going on in front of you, because our minds love mental time travel, right? They love to go on that iPod in our brain and think and fast forward and rewind. And so it's really, right, you get connection when you are on the play button. And I, used to do things as a commander, like, no email Fridays, which meant I didn't sit behind my desk at all on Friday. I wasn't checking email. There were no meetings. Friday was about being out and about, getting to know and connecting with the people that I worked with in a very present way. Writing handwritten notes to people is another way to like build that interpersonal trust and connection. And then my favorite way was to do things like call someone special when an airman or an individual that worked for me, maybe they got, a coin for their great work or a promotion or an award. I would also always call someone, or I'd offer to call someone in their lives. And I, over the course of my command, called brothers, sisters, grandparents, parents, children, aunts and uncles of the people that worked for me. And this one particular airman that got selected below the zone to his next rank, he said, let's call my dad. And so I used to call, ask them for their telephone numbers, but no one answers strangers' phone numbers nowadays, right? So I started this thing where I was like, hey, you pull out your phone. Let's call that someone special right now. And then that person would also get to be part of the conversation. And so this one time I called this airman's dad and got to brag on him a little bit, which was fun. And at the end of the conversation, the dad said, I'm so proud of you. I love you, son. And as we were hanging up, I looked up at my airman and he just had these tears like streaming down his face. And he said, my dad has never said those words to me before.
Wow.
And right, it was one of those moments that I think, I would say at least 50% of the time someone cried, right? Whether it was me, it was the parent, the airman, right? Like someone had an emotional experience or emotion tied to that moment because it was deep connection that we just don't make time for as leaders, right? We're so busy. And so that was where I really found that my mindfulness practice allowed me to create the space for those moments that otherwise I would mind wander through, in the past. I would just kind of be like, hey, nice to meet you, congratulations. And then it's like moving on to the next thing. And when you talk about, in the military environment, in that context, someone that's going to work late because, or take the mission, that no one else wants to take, or take the hill when you're on the deployment, when you have that type of interpersonal trust as a leader, in today's world, many young people will be like, well, I know you say take the hill, but I'm going to check my phone first. And, like what other people think and what what's going on in the world versus I trust you. Mm-hmm. I don't have all the facts right now, but I trust you as my leader that you're making the right decision for me. And so I think mindfulness really unlocks that deeper connection and that deeper trust.
I love that you tied the connection in there too, because that was actually my next question from that opening quote was the power and importance of connection. And can you elaborate? But you already did. So I love that. Very important, the trust and connection that mindfulness can foster. And that
I'm just going to give me 1 second. Yeah. So that trust, John, sorry. I feel like it, my bad, John. It's like,
go ahead. Yeah.
I'm just jumping right on in that for a second. But that trust, like when we get that trust and we become more mindful, we get into that self, like and being more present, right? That's super key. When we're more present, right, we like people can pick up on our vibe. We're able to listen to them more intently. Therefore, we're able to hear them and therefore respond in a way, that is, like connection, right, to what is actually going on, to what they're actually saying. So thanks for clearing that up about trust, because it's so incredibly vital to the self. I get more courage when I'm trusted, and then you can find that courage within an organization if you breed that trust. So sorry, John. I
think Jannell was going to jump on too. So go ahead, Jannell.
Okay, let's all jump on and have fun with this.
This is great. This is such a rich conversation. I love this. The other part of trust that I like to teach in my organizational workshops that we don't always discuss, and I think mindfulness is core to, is the concept of intrapersonal trust. Like, do I trust myself to take a risk? That's where I was
going. Perfect. We're on the same boat. Yeah.
All of us.
Right. That's where you really, like, you have trust that you can regulate your emotions to bring your best self to a moment. You trust that risk-taking will lead to growth and learning, even if failure is part of that process. You can also trust yourself and this is the hard one, and I know my colleague, Dr. Michael Gervais, has just written a book, and it's about to come out, I think in November, about the concept of faux po. Like, you guys have heard of FOMO, right?
Yeah.
Fear of missing. So we teach in our Warriors Edge course this concept of faux po, which is fear of people's opinions.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And-
So I mean, like, yeah, that's powerful. Faux po. Hashtag faux po. Anyway.
And it's real. And it actually, Mike's book will kind of dive into some of the science we're finding behind it. But this concept is that it will be a top constrictor on your ability to reach your potential if you care what other people think. And here's the part that when I point this out to people, it's like this aha moment for many of them. It's what you think other people think.
Yep.
It's not
we
even
talked about that before. It's not what I think of me. It's not what you think of me. It's what I think you think of me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And you're not going to take a risk or put yourself out there or attempt something or do the right thing even in some circumstances because you don't trust yourself enough to push through those thoughts that are really meaningless in an intense moment. Now, it's not to say that feedback doesn't matter, because feedback does, and we should have some trusted individuals that give us that really raw feedback so that we aren't the emperor with no clothes.
Yep.
That concept. But the people in the cheap seats behind keyboards, or the people that are, not impacting my day to day, why should I create something that they're going to think about me and then let that hold me back? That's kind of the concept of self-trust. And that is one of the hardest things. So when I tell leaders, I'll give this one last example. When I teach the concept of a mental push-up, and there actually is research that if you don't have a cell phone in a meeting, you will get 20% of everyone's attention back, because even if your cell phone doesn't make a sound, you're going to constantly be distracted by the possibility of it doing something.
The iPhone effect.
Right? Keep cell phones out of meetings. And then when you do a cognitive preparation in the form of a mindful minute before you begin, everybody brings in baggage from their last meeting, from their last phone call, from their last conversation, from their morning commute, whatever it is. The mindful minute or this cognitive preparation allows you to kind of clear your mind, just like we did at the beginning of this show, right? So that we can focus on what we're doing here in this moment and be present.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of leaders, I'll teach them that technique, and then I'll check in with them a few months later and I'll say, how are those mindful minutes going before your meetings? And they'll say something like, oh, it totally didn't work. And I'm like, well, no, it works. And usually when I get down to it, what happened was the leader themselves was not far along on their own mindfulness journey. And so they'll set up the mindful minute, they'll, get started, close their eyes, then they open them. Right? And you see like one guy, even though 20 people in the room are totally like doing it, and even if they're not quite doing mental push-ups, they all appreciate that moment for a pause. One guy over in the corner is like, shifting in his chair or grimacing,
crossing his arms, like whatever they're doing, they're shaking their head, or, We
know as meditation teachers, right? Yeah. Like if you pay attention
my God.
to that and then you tell yourself, oh my God, everybody hates it. When 99% of the time, it's not even about you, what was happening with that individual, right? Like it might have just been their thing, their moment, their personal, struggles of the day. But then you'll never do the mindful minute again, because that faux pas will get in your head and you won't trust yourself to do that right thing. So that's the struggle.
Yeah, and that mindful minute can come into play for leaders, but it can also come into play, like, I don't have anybody that I'm really leading these days, right? I'm an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, but that mindful minute can still come into play because so many people are doing back-to-back Zoom calls. Sometimes, like, I'll jump on a Zoom call and I'm waiting 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes before the other person joins, and they're like, oh, I'm so sorry, I was just wrapping up another call. When they say that, I know that they are coming into that call still thinking about that last call.
Right.
And their mind is not very focused. So for our audience, what I'm trying to get you all to do is maybe take a mindful 5-10 minutes between these calls. Don't set up hour-long Zoom calls. Set up 50-minute Zoom calls, so you can take 2 or 3 minutes to process the one that you just did, Take 2 or 3 minutes to prepare for the next one, and then take 2 or 3 minutes just to be, right? That's the thing. We don't just be often enough. We're constantly doing, and that comes back to your burnout that you were talking about at the very beginning, Jannell, which is what I want to talk about now. Is can you talk about the relationship between mindfulness and burnout, and how mindfulness can be used as a tool to combat burnout in life, in professional and personal settings?
So the way that I see burnout is a result of your environment and whether your brain makes the calculation as to whether you have the internal resources to meet the demands of a given moment. And when that repetitively happens over time, where your brain's like, oh, hell no, this is too much. Oh, hell no, right? I can't manage this. I feel overwhelmed. I feel stressed. Because honestly, stress is a perceived emotion. A lot of people don't realize that. They just say, oh, I'm stressed out, without really realizing what that technically means. Because stress is our relationship with the moment and how we're perceiving our relationship with it. And do we have the resources to see it as a challenge that we're going to rise to the occasion, or do we not have the resources, and are we going to, freak out and go into survival mode? And that's part of like the ancient mechanism of our brain that is now in this modern chaotic world. So I think a lot of people, their brains default to survival mode, and then this perception of stress is heightened because they haven't front loaded the psychological skill sets like mindfulness. And again, it's not just mindfulness as this panacea or this one magic pill, but it's, I think, the foundational tool, because it helps you learn how to quiet your mind, not clear your mind. And I'm sure you guys, teach this as well, because that's, I think, a fallacy, right? People are like, we're still in the head. Yeah. So
well, just like when they say yoga is just stretching. I mean, I've been working against that for 15 years, ever since I started teaching. It's like yoga is not just stretching. Meditation is not eliminating your thoughts. Anyway, sorry. Thank you for saying that.
No, absolutely. Because the thing is that it's really, I think mindfulness helps us quiet our mind and have a different relationship with our thoughts, right? It's like, I see that thought there. And it may be a shitty thought because you're going through something really crappy, but you can say, I'm going to have a different relationship with that thought right now. I'm going to address that later, because I'm going to be in the present moment, because right now when I'm with my child is not the time to be worried about my to-do list for my work schedule tomorrow. And then having the power to make those conscious choices, I think, is what really unlocks our potential to be our best, especially when things get tough. And so, mindfulness, I like to say the first layer is connecting with our breath, right? Understanding the benefits of that. But the second layer is disconnecting from thoughts, and then the third layer is kind of actually what I call hearing your whisper, right? Hearing all the valuable thoughts that are in there that sometimes get drowned out by the noise of the stress in our life, the overwhelm we feel, I say we play whack-a-mole with all of, the impending doom, taskers that come at us in a given day. And so we never get to have a vision and set real goals and think strategically. All those thoughts and our inner wisdom is there. We just don't hear it because it gets drowned out. So I think mindfulness helps us filter. And then it helps, right? Because a lot of those noises are faux pas. That holds you back. A lot of the noises are your inner critic that's going to tell you, decrease your confidence in an intense moment instead of build it. So that's kind of why mindfulness, I think, is that core foundational skill set, because we can learn to quiet our minds, and then we can layer in a bunch of other high performance mindset skills and psychological tools to help us manage adversity and hard things, whether by chance or by choice.
Yeah, that inner critic reminds me, we had Dr. Jim Doty on, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 months ago. And in his book, Into the Magic Shop, he talks about the inner DJ, right? The inner DJ is in there playing these records that are just telling you negative things about yourself or telling you negative things that you think somebody else is thinking. And it is incredibly powerful when you're able to notice that inner DJ, the record that he's spinning, is false. And you can put stop that thing, take it off, and put a new record on that tells you good things about yourself. Now, I'm not an advocate for toxic positivity. I want to be real, but at the same time, we want to notice when the negative narrative that we're telling ourselves is in fact just that. It's just a story. There's not any truth to it. It's not based on anything. It's just what we feel, and it's incredibly powerful to notice that and overcome it. Now, you talked about for a second there. You talked about being a parent, and the struggles with that. I want to delve into that a little bit more because you are an entrepreneur, you are a leader, you're a devoted mother that we covered, and I've seen the stuff that you've put out on social media about being a parent, and I've seen the pictures where you said you meditate on the top of a mountain there in Salt Lake City when you take your skis off, and I love that. How do you overcome? It seems as though there's tension between the multiple lives that you're living, right? The leader, the entrepreneur that's always wanting to do, then coming back to what I was talking about before about being present with whatever it is, whether it's a conversation with your colleagues at work or shifting to home, being present with your children or your spouse. How do you manage that and deal with that conflict or tension?
So the basic skill set that you're talking about is being present and living where your feet are planted, which I did not do well for a lot of my life. Like there's this picture of me with my 15-month-old daughter at the time when I got back from a deployment, hugging her. And I can still see in my eyes in that moment, like, even though I just got reunited, I was back with her. It was like, okay, what's next?
Yeah.
Instead of this, I wish I could go back and tell her, like, just enjoy this moment, right? Like, enjoy this moment. Like, you're back home, you're with your daughter.
Her, you mean telling yourself, telling the woman in the picture, not your baby, but you. Yeah. Wow.
Yes, I would tell myself in that moment, like, stop worrying, about what's next. Or, I think I was living my life stressful moment to stressful moment to stressful moment. And the inner dialogue was, well, as soon as I'm done with this deployment, I'll take care of myself, or I'll pay attention to my family, as soon as I'm done with this task, or as soon as I'm done with this training program, but there's always something that's next. Right. And so that's really why I'm so big on, mindfulness now, because I was missing the moments of joy and laughter and love. And it's not that they weren't there. They were there. I was just, mind wandering through them. So I think that being a parent and capturing this mindfulness skill set has been very powerful in my life because it's helped me live where my feet are planted. So when I'm with my children, and I'm not perfect at it, I do not want to give any type, thought out there that, I post something on social media and then it's because every moment of my life is like singing.
Exactly. Like everybody on Instagram, right? Or wherever else. Like it's always nobody's sharing the shitty moments, like but anyway.
Beautiful pictures. Yeah. That is not every moment of my life, and it's still a struggle and I still work at it. But what mindfulness provides me, I would say, is more awareness when I'm not where I want to be. Right? It's not that I still don't get caught up in my thoughts. I still don't get stressed or overwhelmed. Like those things still happen to me. But what my regular mindfulness practice does is that I catch it quicker so that I can reframe and redirect and regulate my emotions. And so that's really where it becomes valuable. And then the gift I'm giving my children is teaching them about these things. I mean, I think I was 35 when I first started incorporating these skill sets into my life. And so my children know what a mindful minute is. Even my son, if I start to get road rage, he'll be in the back seat. He's 10. He'll be like, Mom, take 2 deep breaths.
I love it.
2 deep breaths. Or we have this technique we call the mindset reset, because the commute to school used to be chaotic, right? Whether it's, oh my God, I'm hitting every red light, or you forgot your homework, or the kids are bickering in the back seat, or, I'm running late to my next appointment, whatever it is. We started this technique as a family where before they got out of the car to go to school, we would call mindset reset in the car. We would do a mindful minute so that they get out of the car not like anxious and stressed. They get out of the car like calm and more focused and more present. And so, they're getting that gift at a young age where they're incorporating these skill sets into the stressful moments in our life. Because the real triumph is not to be calm all the time. The real triumph is to do something hard, get anxious, and calm yourself down in the moment so that you can perform.
Right.
Yeah. What you hit on a bunch of things. It's like, when you're coming out, when you saw your child, after being deployed for a while and you just came home, and it's just like, you're like mentally driven. It's like, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to do this, I got to go this. And it's like, and the mind just is taken over. One thing, we had Frank Anderson on. He's like one of the founders or one of the big people in IFS, internal family system. And one thing that I really enjoyed he brought to the audience, and I've been really leaning hard on this, is the description of the self. And that's what we're getting to, the capital S self, getting to self energy, right? And this is what mindfulness, that's what these practices are going to do. And then we get into self leadership, not faux leadership, right? But self leadership. And there's 8 C's of the self. And they are curiosity, connection. I'm going to get all these. I was going to say, curiosity, that's connection. You're just messing me up, John. Give me a sec. All right. Curiosity, connection, clarity, calm, compassion, confidence, and courage, right? Those are the 8 C's of the self. And the only way we can possibly experiencing those 8 C's is getting quiet, taking those breaths, becoming more mindful, and practicing. This is what's nice is those 8 C's of the self are already in there. Like it's packed in there as part of our DNA. But because of all like the to-do list and all this, things that all the faux and everything else that we think we need to be and who we need to be and all the things that we need to do, it puts these layers of stress and expectations and anxiety over top of that self, puts us in the mind, deeply into the mind, which only knows what future and past thinking, which is driven by anxiety or stress or guilt or something like that, versus like taking a breath, dropping into the moment. You can hear those whispers, and you get used to more of those whispers, more of those voices as you drop in and meditate. And then you get that trust. Then we get into self-leadership, and then you just become a badass wherever you go, just like, so I just wanted to put that out there because like it was such a great distinction for me when Dr. Frank came on and helped us understand that self. It's like, it's there. We just need to use tools like this, like you're talking about these mental push-ups or these mindful push-ups in order to get to that self. Because it's just waiting, all of his brilliance is just waiting to come out. So,
and one segue into the Rolling Stone story, I know that was a question you had, because I think you encapsulated it very well there. I like to think you have to know yourself to lead yourself and then to lead others. And we a lot of times just jump into like, okay, you're a leader, lead other people. That's what leadership means. Well, no, actually it doesn't. Like leadership means that you've led yourself first, but you can't lead yourself first unless you know, your limitations and what your struggles are and how you're building the right skill sets to kind of be the example to create the culture you want. And in that aspect of leading yourself first and knowing yourself, right? The awareness. And I love all those C's. I'm going to have to like check out.
I'll send them to you. They're awesome. Yeah, for sure.
I love it. When you're kind of touting, like, listing all those C's, it made me think of, mindfulness was not like the answer to how I was able to navigate that stressful situation in Syria and be a leader and, lead this team and come up with this creative, innovative idea. It was all those things together because I knew myself enough to step forward and take the risk. I knew myself enough to lead a team through a challenging environment. And, the core of that story, and I'll let your listeners can look it up and read all the details, but the core was that it was a unsolvable problem. right? Syria was not a friendly country. They were, in the middle of a civil war. There were a lot of rogue bad actors, and they had significant amounts of chemical weapon precursors. So there were 1,200 metric tons of sarin gas precursors, which, right, in like minutes, you saw, a lot of us saw those images splashed on CNN where, it's not a pleasant way to die. And over 1,400 civilians died very quickly when the government used these chemicals on the civilian population. And so the international community had to do something. But it was a very complex scenario. And at the time I was leading the team that was kind of the brain trust of what if scenarios in Syria, which no one ever thought would ever play out, which is, I think, why I got the job.
You mentioned that in the article. It says, like, I think you had just done 3 back hard jobs, and you're just coming off maternity leave, and your boss was like, hey, why don't you just take this job? Nothing's happening over there. Don't worry about it. It's going to be easy. It's going to be a cakewalk. And what did you walk into? This?
It was, and from someone that I was a trained strategist and I could solve big problems, but I knew nothing. I want to be very clear about combating weapons of mass destruction and chemical weapons in particular. So, but I soon learned that anyone that was an expert in chemical weapons didn't even want to touch this mission with a 10-foot pole, because there was no answer to it, right? Like, every conventional way that we could think of to handle or solve the problem, there was a barrier, there was, some type of limfac, and it was unsolvable in many people's minds, until we came up with this innovative option of destroying these chemicals on a ship in the middle of the Mediterranean, which everybody hated. And so, like, if you want to talk about being in the midst of the government bureaucracy with a great idea that you knew would solve this crisis because you were the one that had studied it for so long, but being told at every turn that it was the dumbest idea and it would never work, but yet still, right, having the courage, having the self-trust, having like the presence of mind to continue to lead in that environment. And I'm not going to downplay the leadership I had at the time that created space for that, because I have to be honest, like, I had 2 great supervisors that allowed us. They were told to stop talking about this and, kind of ordered to not talk about what we called the ship option, but they allowed us to like throw papers on people's desks at the Pentagon and talk about it as much as we wanted, to get the word out there that we had this solution. And then, like, the other arc of our story is the fact that not only were we underestimated and dismissed, but our idea was eventually used and it worked. And, everybody else took the credit. And not that it's about credit, but I think there's this unique story of these women that were in this engine room driving this, international crisis and solving the problem for it, that I think is really unique and interesting for other young women to understand, that they can stand up for themselves, they can come up with creative ideas, and they can get through the mental blocks that really hold many of us back from doing great things. Because I'm not unique or special. Like, I just happen to. Oh,
I think you are too. Awesome.
Honestly, like, as far, I'm a human being just like anyone else that struggles with the same things. It's just that I built some psychological skill sets to help me manage in those high pressure moments to get to the other side. Awesome. And I want everyone else to have that too.
Yeah. And I think I've told you this before, when I was working with Veterans Path, when we were working with Veterans Path, but before you came on with Veterans Path and I interviewed you, and you said something about when you were younger, I think your father had seen a magazine with, I think it was a submarine on the cover, if I remember correctly. And you said when you were young, I want to be in the military. I may be messing this story up, but something to the effect of, your dad said you can do anything that you want to. And I use that story with my little girl now. I've got 2 little girls now since the last time we spoke. So 6, 4, and 2 with a little boy in the middle. And I tell my little girls they can do anything, and I show them pictures of highly successful women. I won't even use the word highly successful. I'll just say badass. And one of them is their mom. Their mom is a badass. She was at SEAL Team 10 with me. and she's way more badass than I am. Or ever was. but I use pictures of you as well, and some others as examples of strong women who can do anything that they set their mind to. And I love that that you have that as a story that you can tell your kids. And I know they've read the Rolling Stone article, because I remember them holding up the magazine on social media. So let's see, where should we go? I want to talk. I can't not talk about the machete juggling. tell us about that. Right, mindfulness.
Let's dive in there. Talk about
that
courage.
Is mindfulness right there.
Oh my goodness. So yes, the Rolling Stone reporter had found this little known fact in my history, where when I was 15 years old, I was Miss Teen California. And my talent for that particular pageant was to twirl 1 baton, 2 batons, and then 2 machetes. To the theme song from Robin Hood, which was, big back then.
Oh my gosh, 90s. Please tell me that there's video of this somewhere. We have to find
it. There is video. Yes, there's some video.
Amazing. So, how did you decide upon that as your
how did you get into machete? And wait, what kind of parenting is going on in that house? If they're like, yeah, absolutely, Jannell, go juggle some machetes. But anyway, sorry.
So backing up, when I was a younger kid, I was a ballerina and a gymnast, and eventually a baton twirler. Like, I was a competitive baton twirler. I would go to the national championship every summer at Notre Dame University. Probably from like about 8 to 15, I was really dedicated to this baton twirling sport. And so that's why, and the cover of the magazine my dad saw, it had this Army tank commander, it had an Air Force fighter pilot, and then it had a Navy submarine warfare commander on the cover of it. And my dad was just like, why couldn't a woman do any of those things, right? Because that was in the 80s. And women couldn't. And so that's kind of what started that conversation. And he would tell anyone that would listen, when I'd be holding his hand walking into the grocery store, my daughter here, even though I'm in my tutu, she's going to be a pilot or a submarine warfare commander someday. And right, that like really set the tone to tell me I could do or be anything I wanted. I didn't understand that society was going to put limits on it at the time. And so I ended up doing all these baton twirling competitions. And then when I got into high school, I told my mom, like, oh, I want to do other things, and at my high school team, because baton twirling is a solo venture, right? Like it was, I just did it myself, and we had to travel a lot for these competitions. And my mom was like, well, you're going to use this skill set somewhere else. So she's like, you have to go to this county pageant was where it started. And I ended up winning that, and then winning the state. And we wanted to do, my baton twirling teacher at the time was like, we have to do something unique, not just twirl your baton. So that's where she was like, what do you think of machetes? So that's how that ended up. And I will say, at the national pageant, I was at a disadvantage because they did the Miss Teen USA pageant that year on a cruise ship.
Oh.
I had to perform my talent like on one of the most rocky days at sea. So yeah, imagine.
Did you ever get hurt doing that?
No, not. I didn't.
I can't imagine that. That's crazy.
You got all your limbs, right? Let me see your hands. You got hands, right?
I'm going to have to search the internet, the interwebs, for that video somehow. All right, so let me get back on track, because that's just so great. I couldn't not ask that. But let's come back to the topic at hand, the mindfulness, and for leaders, let's kind of wrap it up in a nice bow. For leaders who want to bring practices in, again, I think we've touched a little bit on this, but if somebody's just tuning in right now live, or if they're just tuning in for the podcast, what is a way that they can introduce to their team mindfulness? And then I guess, what does it do for the team? And then last piece, how is that measured? Because, as a leader, you're always showing metrics, right? Well, what metrics are you measuring to show that these mindfulness practices are working?
So I've worked over the last 5 years since I've started my business and started this work and making the case for training your mind individually and organizationally. I've worked with many leaders from, I started off with real high performance teams. So military, healthcare, first responders, athletes, people who had extreme consequences, right, on the line with their work. However, after COVID, everybody really needs these skill sets. It has become kind of a universal concern. And many leaders today, what I hear all the time is that they're worried about performance, which obviously matters in companies, right? The productivity, these, end results and outcomes matter. But leaders are also worried about the well-being, right? And this care and feeding of their employees, because they know that when an employee has a great work life, when an employee feels empowered and feels present and feels high performing, they're going to do more, or, they're going to perform better for the organization as a whole. So, right, it's like, how do you build performance enhancing skills that also enhance that thriving and well-being for the individual? And they're all rooted in this concept, I truly believe, of incorporating not just training your mind, but along with training your craft and along with training your body on equal footing, incorporating a deliberate and intentional focus on training your mind. And so, leaders are looking for ways to invest in that. They're looking for ways to, I would say the only way it's going to take hold in your culture is if you create the space for investing in psychology of your employees and then creating an environment around sustaining the development and practice of the skill sets. And that's where it gets really, really hard for people. You had said something about burnout earlier, and I meant to say, solving for burnout is not just giving people a mental health day. Solving for burnout is not taking that retreat once a year where you fish on the lake and feel fully present and engaged, right? Like, solving for burnout is creating sustainable ways to incorporate training of your mind in your daily routine and creating an environment that's conducive to that, right? If you have a toxic boss, you do yoga all day and meditate all I want, I'm still going to be burnt out and overwhelmed and stressed at work.
Sure. Right.
I might be able to manage it a little better, but the environment hasn't changed. And I think that's what leaders get wrong sometimes, because they're like, I'm giving people mental health days, like, what's wrong? And then I'll also talk to them and I'll say, well, when you send an email at 1 a.m. on Saturday, what is your expectation? And they're like, well, that someone writes me back.
Yeah. Right.
Burnout, Yeah. So it's a lot about investing in psychology to unlock potential and setting the right tone as the leader to create the culture and environment that allows the space for it.
Right on.
Yeah, but that just leads us right into a shameless plug. Like, we're actually working with a company down in the Carolinas from a listener from our show, and we're implementing a whole well-being and mindfulness program into this company. We do breath work every week. We have one-on-ones. We have other programming that we plug in every month. And again, it's coming from the leadership. The leadership is part of these trainings as well. And everybody is just it's amazing. We're getting grounded. We're understanding these wonderful tools. I just got a quick text from one of my students yesterday from this it's called HMI, this company, and he's like, hey, I'm meeting all these engineers and I'm gonna need to pitch to them. I need to calm down. What can you tell me to do? And I just left him a quick voice text and be like, hey, just do this before I go in. So it's it really makes a big difference. And I love that you hit on, it has to come not just the idea of mindfulness, maybe not just those 1 minute before you start a meeting, but incorporating it into the ethos, into the ecosystem and the environment within the company, and you can really start to make a difference. And it just starts slow. I mean, it's not 1 week or 1 month is going to make a difference. But over time, like everybody starts to wake up a little bit. We develop more of that trust. We develop more better communication, better listening, all starts to happen. All those indicators start to rise when you begin to practice together as a company. So anyway, shameless plug. If you guys need anyone out there listening, hit John or I up. We'll gladly work with you and talk with you about bringing a mindfulness program into your company.
I'll just add to that CEO is a Naval Academy graduate, so just saying.
I didn't know that. Okay, there you go.
But yeah, he's actually a classmate of mine. So also,
one thing though, John, just because you asked me about metrics, which I think
great. Thanks for circling back to that.
Yeah, play into your plug as well. We're in the business of prevention, really, right? Like preventing people from having suicidal ideations, preventing people from choosing maladaptive coping to the stress and adversity they face in their life. And that is a really, really hard thing to measure, and I think that's why the investment in psychology, the investment in training the mind has been slow. There are leaders out there that's why I have a job. You guys have a job, because there are leaders they get it. They understand that this is the next frontier. It doesn't matter if you have the best fighter plane or the best, product out on the market. If the people behind it aren't clear with their mind and disciplined and focused and highly productive and high performing, you're missing out on max performing or optimizing that performance for your organization. And so people are understanding the investment, but it is taking time to really demonstrate, because it's cultural, right? And culture does not change overnight. So it's taking time to really show the larger effects. But I do think we could take both subjective and objective data from a lot of organizations after our interventions. And with Warriors, we have found that 90% after they get introduced to mindfulness and the way that we teach it, because some people will find it other ways and it just doesn't click. We have this warrior athlete model that we tend to use that resonates. And, 90% of people in these organizations are continuing to use mindfulness, or the mindful minute is something that, wait, I could do that. Like you're not telling me to sit on a cushion for 20 minutes every morning to get my mindfulness. Okay, well, like I can do that. Then I can do a minute, or I can create space for that. And then we're also finding that it's not that people's stress is being decreased, but their perception of stress in their life. And and then when you look at an organization's metrics, like when I did this with my squadron, we won all these awards, and we were able to like individual awards, team awards, right? Like take our squadron to this new level of doing innovative things, kind of like that Syria mission. And if you look at those types of metrics and outcomes as well from organizations, you will see that when people are feeling better and more focused, the organization will also reach the outcomes that matter.
Yeah, awesome. Well,
love it.
Jumping from one shameless plug to another, for you, Jannell, how can people find you? How can people find out more about what it is you're doing, and what are some projects that you're working on that are coming up? I mean, I know that you mentioned potentially the movie, or at least I mentioned that. What else is going on, and how can people find you?
Yeah, so I have a website, JannellMacAulay.com, which shares all of the work that I do. I do keynote speeches at conferences, or I do workshop engagements with leadership teams and organizations. You can find information about that on my website. Additionally, I'm happy to link in with anyone, or you can find me on social media. However, I have a very, very healthy relationship with social media. So, I would love to hear from people and how they are on their journeys, and if this is impactful to them. But, don't be offended if I don't respond to a comment or an email, because again, I try to create a lot of space in my life for you. Being present. Yeah. So please feel free to reach out in any way. Warrior's Edge, if you Google my name and Warrior's Edge, you can find more information about that program and how we can bring it to your team. We also have a digital version that you can sign up for and take yourself online in a self-paced way. There's about 8 hours of curriculum and 16 principles of mindset we train and teach. And then lastly, I've got some big projects in the works. I'm working on my book. So I'm hoping that's gonna be coming out in the near future. And I've got a couple other projects, to include one with Headspace.
That's exciting. Good for you.
Yeah, that's great.
Future, very excited for all of this. I feel very grateful every day. My purpose statement would be, I want to help people achieve peak performance with a focus on passion, purpose, and presence. And if I get to do that every day, whether it's the little people in my life and my kids and my spouse, making us better and stronger, or working with people like you and the teams out there, it just is, where I find purpose, and I love it.
Awesome. Well, Jannell, like we opened the show, well, first off, thank you for sharing that. And I'm sure our audience will seek you out for your guidance and your experience. And as we open the show with an opening practice, we'd like to turn it over to you to run our audience through, and me and Will, through a closing practice, if you would.
Yes. In fact, I would love to do a mindful minute and teach the technique of the mental push-up.
Let's do it.
So what I'm going to ask you to do for this entire minute is just anchor on a sensation of your breathing. Maybe the way the air goes in and out of your nostril, or the rise or fall of your belly or chest, but focus on that sensation for the entire minute. In the span of the minute, your mind will wander, right? A thought will pop into your head. So what I want you to think about is your attention system is like a flashlight, and it's focused on your breath until that thought pops in your head. When it starts chasing the thought, I want you to acknowledge the thought, release it, and redirect your attention system back to your breathing. Every time you lose focus and redirect it back, it's like doing a mental push-up. So we're going to do that for 1 minute. All right, ready? Let's take a nice big deep breath. As you exhale, I want you to think about relaxing through your shoulders, but lifting through your head. Every time your attention system chases a thought, we'll redirect back to that breathing. Ready, and begin. And stop. All right.
Beautiful.
Maybe you did like 5 mental push-ups, maybe 60. It's totally cool. It's a practice. I tell everybody. And a lot of people tend to go, oh my gosh, my mind is so busy. Like, I had so many thoughts. And the talking point shouldn't be, I suck at this, therefore I should never do it.
Right.
But it should be, wow, my mind is busy. Maybe this skill set can help me out.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, my FOPO was kicking in big time. I'm like, oh, what if people are tuning in right now and they're seeing us and the 3 of us are sitting here?
Nothing like dead air in a podcast.
Like, what in the world is this podcast all about? It's just 3 people sitting there. Hey, Jannell.
There are a lot of people that get uncomfortable with that, which is why I was like, just do it for 1 minute.
Right.
We have to get comfortable with that parasympathetic activation. So
for sure. Jannell, this was an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I know Will and I got a ton out of it, and for the three people that tuned in, no, hopefully it's more than 3 that tuned in, I know they got a lot out of it too. So thank you so much for being here with us, and we appreciate everything that you're doing here today and everything that you're doing in your daily life. This is awesome. You're changing people's lives and really making a positive impact on the planet. And I know that sounds big, hairy, and audacious, but that's what you're doing. So I love it. Keep doing it. Keep doing it. For our audience, thanks for tuning in. If you got anything out of this, and I know you did, please share it. Share it with your friends, your family, your colleagues, whoever else you think needs to hear it. And until next time, take care.
Yeah. Thank you.
Peace.
Thanks, Doc. Bye, everybody. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for joining us today. We hope you walk away with some new tools and insights to guide you on your life journey. New episodes are being published every week, so please join us again for some meaningful discussion. For more information, please check out mentalkingmindfulness.com.